The late afternoon sun dipped low over the crowded streets of Manila, painting the narrow alleyways in shades of gold and amber. Jeepneys rattled by, their sides splashed with bright colors and saints' names. Vendors called out over the hum of traffic selling roasted corn fish balls and sweet banana Q. Amid the noise and laughter of life, a man's gentle humming floated out from a small cafe on the corner of the street, soft, deep and full of soul. Inside the cafe Ramon de Vera, a broad-shouldered man in his mid-40s with kind eyes and calloused hands, was wiping down tables for the last customers of the day. He worked quietly, humming an old tune that had become his nightly ritual. Can't Help Falling in Love, by Elvis Presley. The sound seemed to fill the air with a kind of warmth that made people pause. Even the young barista Jonah stopped sweeping to listen for a moment. Tito Ramon, she called out teasingly, you should be on stage not cleaning it. Ramon laughed, shaking his head. Ah Jonah, the stage doesn't pay for rice and schoolbooks, he said with a wink. But deep inside, her words touched something in him, a dream long buried under years of work and struggle. He had loved singing since he was a boy. Back then when his father played old Elvis records on a beat-up cassette player, Raymond would imitate every note and move, pretending their small room was a grand stage in Las Vegas. But when his parents died young, he had to give up that dream to raise his younger sister Mila. Now years later, he was doing the same for her daughter, Lisa, a bright-eyed 13-year-old with boundless energy and faith in her uncle. That evening as he finished stacking the chairs, Lisa burst into the cafe, her school bag bouncing against her back. Uncle Raymond, she called, breathless. The power's out again at home, so I thought I'd wait for you here. Raymond smiled and reached into his pocket. Then you came just in time, he said, pulling out 2 pieces of pandesal wrapped in paper. Dinner for my favorite girl. Lisa grinned and hugged him tightly. You always say that. As they sat together in the quiet cafe, she listened to him softly singing again while he mopped the floor. She had heard him sing all her life, in the mornings when he cooked, in the evenings when he worked, and even on rainy nights when he thought she was asleep. But tonight, something about his voice felt different. It was fuller, more emotional, almost like it carried every story of hardship and hope he'd ever lived through. Uncle, Lisa said suddenly, why don't you sing for real, like on TV? Raymond chuckled, resting his mop. Anak, those things are for people with connections. For people who look good on stage.
I'm just me, but you're better than them?
She insisted. Your voicey, it makes me want to cry. But Ina looked at her, touched. Ah Lisa, life isn't about being famous. It's about being faithful. We sing to lift hearts, even if it's just one person's. She didn't reply, but her eyes shimmered with quiet determination. When they got home that night, the tiny apartment was dimly lit by a single candle. The walls were cracked, but decorated with pictures of their family, Mila smiling in her nurse uniform, Raymond in his cafe apron, and Lisa holding a guitar almost too big for her small hands. As Lisa sat doing her homework, she heard Raymond singing again while washing dishes. She turned and watched him from the corner of her eye. The way his voice filled their little home, the way his face softened when he sang. And in that moment, an idea sparked in her heart. A few days later, when the cafe was closing and the last customer left, Lisa pulled out her phone. Uncle, she said, pretending to do homework at one of the tables, can you sing that Elvis song again? Please, it helps me concentrate. Ramon laughed. You want me to help with homework or give you a concert? Both, she said with a grin. So, he sang, his voice deep and soulful, echoing softly through the cafe. Without him knowing, Lisa pressed the record button. She held her phone steady, tears glistening as she listened to the man who had given up everything for her. The man who fixed her hair before school, who walked miles to save jeepney fare, who never complained about working 2 jobs. When he finished, she clapped softly. Uncle, you sound just like Elvis. No, even better. Ah, you're just being sweet, he said, smiling modestly. Come, let's go home. You've got school tomorrow. That night, when he fell asleep on the worn-out couch, Lisa sat in the glow of her phone and watched the video again and again. Each time, it moved her more. There was something in his voice, raw, unpolished, but full of truth. She didn't know how the world would react, but she knew one thing for sure: it deserved to be heard. So she uploaded it, just a simple caption. My Uncle Raymond singing Elvis in our cafe. He doesn't know I recorded this. Please listen to his heart. Within hours the video started to spread. People commented things like, this man sings with pure soul, you can feel every word. This is what real music sounds like. By morning, thousands had watched. By night, hundreds of thousands. And across the ocean in a studio in Los Angeles, a casting assistant at America's Got Talent opened an email from a colleague titled, You need to see this Filipino Elvis. But Raymond didn't know any of that yet. He woke up early, as usual, to cook breakfast for Lisa, just rice, egg, and a little coffee. She smiled at him across the table, her phone glowing beside her. Uncle, she said softly, promise me something. What is it, Anak? When the world hears your voice, don't ever stop singing. He laughed, shaking his head. You and your imagination. But little did he know by that time, the world already had heard, and it was listening, closely. The next morning began like any other for Raymond. He walked through the crowded streets of Tondo, Manila, with his old lunchbox in hand and a towel draped over his shoulder. The sky was pale blue, and the air smelled faintly of roasted peanuts and exhaust fumes. He nodded to familiar faces, the tricycle driver who always waved, the fruit vendor who always offered a free banana. But what he didn't know was that while he was scrubbing floors and wiping tables, something extraordinary was happening online. At first, it started with a few notifications on Lisa's phone, a handful of likes, a few shares and a few comments. She smiled, thinking it was just their relatives being kind. But by noon the numbers began to explode, hundreds became thousands, and then tens of thousands. Her uncle's voice, the same voice that filled their tiny apartment every night, was now echoing through the phones of people in New York, London, and Sydney. By evening, every time she refreshed the page the view count leaped higher, 50,000, 100,000, 300,000. Her heart raced as she read the comments. Who is this man? His voice is pure gold. I haven't cried from a song in years, this touched my soul.
Filipino Elvis!
Please someone get this man on America's Got Talent. Her hands trembled as she ran to the cafe. When she burst through the door, Raymond was sweeping, humming softly as always. Uncle, she gasped.
Nearly out of breath.
Your Raymond froze mid-sweep, looking confused. Famous? What are you talking about, Anak? She showed him the phone. There, on the glowing screen, was his face, singing in their little cafe, with over 500,000 views. The comments kept rolling in so fast she could barely read them. Raymond blinked, stunned. That's me. Lisa nodded, grinning. I uploaded your song, Uncle. People love it. They're saying you sound like Elvis but with more heart. He took the phone from her, scrolling through the endless messages. People from different countries, strangers, thanking him for his voice. Some said it reminded them of their fathers, others said it gave them hope. He felt a strange tightness in his chest. Why would people care about me, Liza? I'm just a janitor from Manila. Because you made them feel something. She said simply. That's what real music does. Raymond sat down heavily on a chair, still holding the phone like it was a fragile dream. His hands shook. Mila, if only your mother could see this, he whispered. For the first time in many years, his eyes filled with tears, not of exhaustion, but disbelief. That night the two of them stayed up late, watching the video's numbers climb. Journalists began reaching out, small local radio stations wanted interviews. A reporter from ABS-CBN even showed up at the cafe the next morning, holding a microphone. Sir Raymond, she asked with a smile, how does it feel to be called the Filipino Elvis? Raymond scratched his head shyly. I don't know about Elvis, ma'am. I just sing from the heart. That's all I know. The clip aired on national TV that night, and when it did, the video truly went viral. By morning it had crossed 2 million views. People began tagging America's Got Talent on social media, demanding they find him. Comments flooded their official pages. Bring the Filipino Elvis to AGT, Simon Cowell needs to hear this man. This is what real talent looks like. And then, one quiet afternoon a few days later, while Raymond was folding napkins at the cafe, his old phone buzzed. It was an unfamiliar email address, one that made his heart skip a beat. From Casting Ag Production. Calm subject. Invitation to audition for America's Got Talent. He read the message 3 times before daring to believe it. Dear Mr. Raymond de Vera, we recently came across a viral video of you performing Can't Help Falling in Love on social media. We were deeply moved by your voice and would love to invite you to audition for America's Got Talent in Los Angeles, USA. Please let us know if you are interested and available to travel. Best regards, the AGT casting team. Raymond's hand trembled as he passed the phone to Lisa. Anak, what does this mean? Lisa screamed.
Uncle, it's real.
They want you to audition, in America. Blink dazed. America. Me. She nodded so hard her ponytail bounced.
Yes, it's your dream.
You have to go. But as soon as the excitement hit, fear followed. He looked down at his rough hands, the hands of a laborer, not a star. Liza, how could I? I've never been on a plane. I don't have the money or even a passport. Then we'll find a way, she said firmly. God didn't bring you this far just to stop here. He sat down, overwhelmed, the email still glowing in front of him. Your mother used to tell me, he whispered, that one day my voice would take me far. I thought she meant the next town, not the other side of the world. Liza held his hand tightly. Maybe she meant exactly that. Over the next few days, the community rallied behind him. The cafe owner organized a small fundraiser. Neighbors chipped in for his passport and ticket, and even strangers online donated after hearing his story. It seemed as though the entire country was cheering for him. When the day of his flight finally arrived, the airport was crowded with well-wishers holding homemade signs that read, Go Filipino Elvis, and Make Us Proud. Raymond. Lisa hugged him tightly at the gate, her eyes shining. Promise me, Uncle, she said, no matter what happens, just sing from your heart. He smiled, his voice thick. That's the only way I know how. As he boarded the plane, he looked out the window at the fading lights of Manila. He thought of all the nights he'd sung quietly to himself, songs that no one was supposed to hear. Now the world was listening. He whispered a prayer. Lord, I don't know why you chose me, but I'll do my best to make you proud. Somewhere above the Pacific Ocean, with the hum of the engines around him, Raymond closed his eyes and smiled. For the first time in his life, he wasn't just dreaming, he was living. The bright lights of Los Angeles gleamed like jewels against the night sky as the taxi wound its way toward the massive studio where America's Got Talent was filmed. Raymond sat in the back seat, his worn leather jacket folded neatly on his lap, his heart pounding harder with every passing street. The cab driver glanced at him in the rearview mirror. First time in the U.S., man, he asked with a friendly grin. Raymond nodded, his voice quiet. Yes sir. First time leaving my country. Well, you picked a big reason to come. AGT, huh? That's huge. Raymond smiled nervously. It still feels like a dream. Back home, I only sing to mop buckets and coffee cups. The driver laughed. Well, tonight you're singing to the world, my friend. When the taxi pulled up to the studio gates, Raymond stepped out slowly, clutching his small bag. The sign America's Got Talent auditions today glowed brightly above the crowd. Contestants from all over the world stood in line, dancers stretching, magicians practicing, singers humming under their breath. Everyone seemed so confident, so ready. Raymond swallowed hard. He wasn't used to big crowds. Back in Manila the cafe only seated 20 people. Here there were hundreds. Inside the waiting area he was handed a contestant number 1178. He pinned it to his chest with trembling hands. Lisa's small drawing, a paper heart with the words, "Sing with your soul," was tucked safely in his jacket pocket. When a production assistant handed him a microphone for his sound check, he held it like something sacred. First time holding one of these? She asked kindly. He nodded. The first time that it's not plastic. She smiled, touched. Well, let's make it count. As the hours passed, Raymond watched other performers come and go, some left crying, others cheering. He could hear faint snippets of applause and laughter from the stage behind the curtain. He closed his eyes and whispered a prayer. Lord, give me strength. Not to impress but to inspire. Finally, a stage manager tapped his shoulder. Ramon de Vera, you're next. His heart leapt. He adjusted his jacket, took a deep breath, and stepped toward the curtain. Beyond it, the roar of the crowd grew louder. The stage was massive, far bigger than anything he had ever imagined. The lights were blinding, the cameras intimidating. He walked out slowly, squinting under the glare, his boots echoing softly on the polished floor. The judges sat before him, Simon Cowell, Sofia Vergara, Heidi Klum, and Howie Mandel. Their faces familiar from television, yet surreal in person. Hello there, Howie greeted. What's your name, and where are you from? Raymond's accent was gentle as he spoke. Good evening sir. My name is Raymond de Vera, and I come from the Philippines. The audience erupted in cheers, waving flags and signs from Filipino fans who had come to support him. Simon leaned forward, curious. What are you going to do for us today, Raymond? I will sing sir. A song by Elvis Presley. Simon raised an eyebrow. Elvis, huh? That's a bold choice. Why Elvis? Raman hesitated for a moment, then smiled. Because when I was young, my father played his songs every day. He said Elvis sang with heart, not just voice. I try to do the same. The sincerity in his tone silenced the room. Simon nodded slowly. Alright Raman, the stage is yours. The music, the familiar melody of Can't Help Falling in Love. For a brief moment, Raymond froze. The lights, the cameras, the thousands of eyes watching, it all pressed against him. His throat felt dry. Then, he saw her, a young girl in the front row, waving a small Philippine flag. She looked just like Lisa. He closed his eyes, and sang. Wise men say only fools rush in. His voice came out low and trembling at first, but it carried something raw, something pure. The room seemed to still. The lights softened, his tone grew stronger, each note trembling with emotion. By the second verse he wasn't in Los Angeles anymore. In his mind he was back in the cafe, mop in hand, singing to empty tables. He sang for his sister, for Lisa, for every dreamer who ever thought they were too small to be heard. Take my hand, take my whole life too. The crowd was on its feet, phones lifted, people cried. Simon Cowell, usually stone-faced, sat with his chin resting on his hand, his expression softening with every note. When Raymond hit the final line, "For I can't help falling in love with you," his voice broke just slightly. That imperfection, that fragile tremor, made it real. The last note hung in the air like a prayer. Then, silence. For one long heartbeat, no one moved. Then the room exploded. Thunderous applause, cheers, tears, standing ovations. The camera zoomed in on Simon's face, where something unthinkable happened. He smiled. Heidi was the first to speak. Ramon, that was beautiful. You didn't just sing, you told a story. Sophia nodded, dabbing her eyes. I think everyone here felt it. You have such a pure spirit. Howie leaned forward. Raman, you reminded us why we love this show. You brought soul back to the stage. Then, Simon cleared his throat, his voice quiet but firm. Raman, I've heard hundreds of Elvis covers in my life. Most are just impressions, people trying to sound like him. But you didn't copy Elvis. You carried his spirit, and that, he paused, that is something even Elvis himself would be proud of. The audience erupted again. Raymond stood frozen, tears spilling down his cheeks. He pressed his hands together, bowing slightly. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Simon leaned back in his chair. You came all the way from the Philippines for this moment, and I think it's only right we make it unforgettable. He stood up, something he rarely did, and looked at his fellow judges. Then, with a small smile, he reached out his hand and slammed the golden buzzer. Golden confetti rained down from above like sunlight breaking through clouds. The music swelled. Raymond fell to his knees, overwhelmed. He covered his face with his hands shaking with emotion. Lisa, watching from backstage on a monitor thousands of miles away, screamed and cried all at once. That's my uncle, she shouted, tears streaming down her face. Simon walked onto the stage and shook Raymond's hand. Never doubt yourself again, he said quietly. You have a gift, and the world deserves to hear it. Raymond could barely speak. Thank you, sir, for listening. Simon smiled. No, Raymond, thank you for reminding us what real music is. As the golden rain continued to fall, Raymond lifted his hands to the air, whispering a prayer of gratitude. He didn't see fame or fortune. He saw the faces of those he sang for, his sister, his niece, his neighbors back home. He had carried their hopes across the ocean, and in that moment, their voices sang with his. Golden confetti swirled like a storm of sunlight, catching in the bright studio lights as the audience erupted into cheers. The sound was deafening. Applause, shouts, laughter, and tears all blending into one overwhelming roar of joy. On the center of that massive stage, Raymond de Vera, the humble janitor from Manila, stood frozen with disbelief. He looked up at the glittering gold raining down on him, the lights reflecting off every piece like tiny stars. His hands trembled, his eyes wide, his breath shallow. Then he covered his face, his shoulders shaking uncontrollably. The crowd only grew louder. People were on their feet, clapping, waving flags, Filipino flags, American flags, strangers uniting in that single moment of pure emotion. From the judges' table, Simon Cowell smiled, not the smirk of a critic, but the warm, genuine smile of someone deeply moved. He leaned forward and said into the microphone, his voice nearly drowned out by the cheers, "Ladies and gentlemen, that is what this show is all about." Ramon looked up, his eyes red and glistening. He wanted to speak but couldn't. His throat was too tight, his mind was spinning with memories. The cafe, the mop, the smell of coffee, the sound of Lisa's laughter, the nights when he sang just to forget how tired he was. He whispered softly, "Thank you, Lord, thank you." Simon stood and began walking toward the stage. The crowd's roar softened to a hum as he climbed the steps. Raymond quickly wiped his tears. Unsure what to do, Simon extended his hand. "Raman," he said gently, "I've been doing this for a long time. I've heard thousands of voices, but very few touch people the way you just did." Raymond gripped his hand tightly, his voice quivering. "Thank you. Sir, you don't know what this means to me." Simon smiled. "I think I do." He turned to the audience and added, "You just proved that real talent has no borders, no age, no fancy background. It just needs heart, and you, Raymond, you have a golden one." The audience cheered again. Raymond bowed deeply, the confetti still falling around him like blessings from heaven. Backstage, Lisa watched the live feed on a small monitor beside the stagehands. She had flown to America just days before the audition, a miracle made possible by donations and community support. When she saw her uncle kneel in tears under the shower of gold, she broke down completely. "That's my uncle," she sobbed, clutching her chest. "That's my Uncle Raymond." A kind crew member beside her handed her a tissue and smiled. "He's amazing. You must be proud." "I am," she whispered, her voice trembling. "He deserves this so much." After the show, the backstage area buzzed with excitement. Contestants congratulated Raymond, some even hugging him through tears. One young singer said, "Sir, you gave me hope again. You reminded me why I started singing." Raymond smiled shyly. "Just keep singing with heart and knack. That's all that matters." Moments later, a producer approached him. "Raymond, the world is already talking about you. Your performance just went viral. It's trending on every platform." He blinked in disbelief. "Already?" "Yes," the producer said with a grin. "Millions of views, in less than an hour." Raman sank into a chair, overwhelmed. His voice shook as he said, "All I wanted was to sing. I never thought the world would listen." Lisa rushed in then, still crying, and threw her arms around him. "You did it, Uncle! You really did it!" He hugged her back tightly, holding her as if afraid she might disappear. "No, Anak," he said softly. "We did it. You believed when I didn't." She laughed through tears. "No, everyone knows what I've known all along. You were born to sing." He smiled, brushing her hair back. "Maybe. But I think I was born to love, and singing is just how I show it." That night, when they returned to their small hotel, Raymond sat by the window in silence. The city glittered below, alive with neon signs and the hum of life. but all he could think about was home. The smell of rain on Manila streets, the sound of tricycles, the laughter of children playing outside their building. He picked up his phone, which was buzzing nonstop with messages. Journalists, producers, old friends, strangers, everyone wanted to talk to him, but one message caught his eye. It was from Jonah, the barista from the cafe back home.
Tito Ramen, we watched you live!
Everyone here at the cafe is crying. You made all of us proud. You showed the world that Filipinos have heart. Congratulations. Sir, Elvis would be proud of you too. He smiled through tears. He typed back slowly, tell everyone thank you. I just sang the way we do back home, with love. He placed the phone down and whispered another prayer. Thank you, Lord, for using my voice. I don't deserve this, but I'll do my best to honor it. The next morning, he woke up early, out of habit. Old routines die hard. He brewed a cup of coffee, looked in the mirror, and saw a man who still looked the same. Tired eyes, calloused hands. But something in his gaze had changed. There was light there now. He turned on the TV and saw his own face on an international news channel. The headline read, Filipino janitor's Elvis rendition wins the golden buzzer, and the world's heart. He watched clips of himself singing, clips of Simon pressing the golden buzzer, and the sea of golden confetti. Commentators spoke about his humility, his sincerity, his faith. People everywhere were talking about him, not just as a singer but as a symbol of hope. When Lisa woke up and saw the screen, she laughed and hugged him from behind.
Uncle, look, you're famous now.
He chuckled softly. Fame is temporary, Anak. But kindness lasts forever. If my story can make one person believe in their dream again, that's enough. She nodded. It already has. People are saying you gave them hope. Raymond smiled faintly. Then maybe that's why God gave me this voice, not for stages but for hearts. Later that day he was invited for an interview on a major talk show. The host asked, Raman, what do you think is the secret behind your success? He paused for a moment thinking. Then he said quietly, it's not really success, it's grace. I think when you sing for love, for family, for faith, not for fame, people can feel it. That's all I did. The audience applauded. When the show ended, as he walked offstage, he found a quiet corner backstage and took out the little paper heart Lisa had drawn, the one that read Sing with Your Soul. It was crumpled now, a little worn from travel, but he held it close. You were right, Lisa, he whispered. The heart always finds its way, even across oceans. And somewhere deep inside he knew, this wasn't just about one golden buzzer. It was about what it represented: faith, family, and the power of an honest song. He smiled softly and said to himself, Elvis sang, but I lived the words, take my hand, take my whole life too. He had given everything he had, and the world had given it back in gold. The Manila sun had barely risen, casting a soft orange glow over the narrow streets of Raymond's neighborhood. Children were already playing by the sari store, their laughter mixing with the distant call of a tricycle driver. The air smelled of pandesal and morning coffee. For the first time in years the street seemed brighter, alive with pride and joy. Raymond walked slowly along the familiar path he used to take every day to the cafe where he once worked as a janitor. Only now he was greeted differently. Vendors waved, strangers smiled. A group of teenagers shouted, Kuya Raymond Elvis in Pilipinas, and started singing, Can't Help Falling in Love. Raymond laughed, shaking his head in disbelief. Ah, you kids, he said, pretending to scold them, you sing better than me now. They laughed even louder, and one of them replied, Kuya, you're our idol. That word, idol, still felt strange to him. For years, he was invisible, just a man sweeping floors and humming old songs. Now he was someone people looked up to, not because he was famous, but because he'd shown them that dreams didn't have an expiration date. As he reached his small house, he heard familiar giggles inside. Lisa was teaching a group of neighborhood children how to sing. She sat on the floor with a small guitar, her hair tied back, surrounded by eager faces. Good morning, everyone, Raymond said, leaning on the doorframe. Uncle Raymond, Lisa exclaimed, standing up to hug him. We were just practicing for the school music contest. He smiled warmly. And what are you teaching them today? Lisa grinned. Elvis, of course. Love Me Tender, but they want to sing it Filipino style. Raymond chuckled. Then it will sound even more beautiful. He sat beside them, his calloused fingers brushing the guitar strings. The kid's eyes lit up. Uncle Ramon, a little boy asked shyly, is it true you met Simon Cowell? Ramon laughed softly. Yes, it's true. What did he say to you? The boy pressed on. Raymond paused for a moment, remembering the moment the golden buzzer fell like gold rain around him. The echo of Simon's words still rang in his heart. You've reminded us why we love music. He looked at the boy and said. He told me something I'll never forget. He said music isn't about sounding perfect, it's about making people feel something real. The children nodded, as if they understood, and maybe they did. Later that day, Raymond stood on the small stage he'd built outside the community center. It wasn't much, just a wooden platform, a microphone, and a banner that read "The Ramo Fianon. Musi sa for foiarda." The foundation was his way of giving back. With the money he earned from AGT and his new opportunities, he didn't buy a big house or a fancy car. Instead, he used it to buy instruments, repair the community center, and provide free music lessons for poor kids who had dreams like he once did. As the children sang, parents gathered to listen, clapping along proudly. When the last song ended, Raymond took the microphone and said, "When I was young, I thought dreams were for people who had everything, but now I know. They're for people who refuse to give up. It doesn't matter where you come from or how old you are. If you have heart, the world will hear your song." Applause filled the air. Some parents wiped away tears. Lisa walked up beside him holding a framed photo. "Unc, I have something for you." It was a picture of the moment Simon hit the golden buzzer. Raymond kneeling on the AGT stage, confetti raining down, his face filled with awe. Below the photo was a quote handwritten by Liza: "You don't need fame to shine, you just need heart." Raymond's eyes softened. "Lisa, this means everything." She smiled. "You taught me that, uncle. You showed me what it means to believe." He placed an arm around her shoulder and whispered, "No, you taught me. You were the one who believed first." Months passed, and Raymond's foundation grew. News outlets covered his story again, not for his AGT fame but for his community work. He became a mentor for kids who had nothing but passion. Some of his students went on to win scholarships, others started teaching in nearby villages. One evening, as the sun dipped below the Manila skyline, Raymond sat by his window with his guitar. He strummed softly, humming, "Can't Help Falling in Love," the same song that changed his life. Lisa came in quietly and sat beside him. "You still sing that song every night," he smiled. "It reminds me that miracles happen when you least expect them." She looked out at the street, where kids were still singing under the lamplight. "Do you ever miss the big stage?" Raymond thought for a moment. "Sometimes. But this," he gestured toward the children laughing outside, "this is the real stage. This is where the music matters most." There was a peaceful silence. The world had moved on, but for Raymond, life had never been richer. He had found purpose, not in applause, but in giving others a voice. A few weeks later, a letter arrived from the US. It was handwritten, rare in the modern world. Raymond opened it carefully. It was from Simon Cowell himself. "Dear Raymond, I've seen many singers come and go, but few have stayed in my memory the way you have. You didn't just sing Elvis, you reminded the world of what music can do. Keep inspiring others. The world needs voices like yours. With respect and admiration, Simon Cowell." Raymond held the letter close to his chest, eyes glistening. He whispered, "Thank you, Simon. Thank you for believing." That night, at the community center, Raymond hosted a small concert called Hearts That Sing. It featured children from all over the neighborhood. The stage lights flickered, and the crowd, made up of neighbors, parents, and old co-workers from the cafe, cheered loudly. As Raymond took the stage for the final song, he looked out at the smiling faces and said, "This isn't my story anymore. It's ours." He began to sing Elvis's "If I Can Dream." His voice, aged but powerful, filled the hall, rich with gratitude, love and hope. The lyrics echoed through the night. "There must be lights burning brighter somewhere. There must be birds flying higher in a sky more blue." The children joined in, their voices blending with his. By the final note, everyone was on their feet. Some classmates cried. All felt the same unspoken truth, that one man's song had turned into a movement of love. When the crowd dispersed, Raymond looked up at the stars and said quietly, "Maybe Elvis was right, music never dies." Liza slipped her hand into his. "No, uncle, it just finds new voices." He smiled, the gentle kind that comes from a soul at peace. And as the night breeze carried the faint sound of children singing in the distance, Raymond closed his eyes, whispering, "The music will live on in them."